A survey suggests Chinese officials are using the coronavirus to double down on foreign firms. A great deal of European companies stationed in China say Beijing is refusing to grant their bosses and workers entry. The findings come just days after President Xi Jinping promised the business community to continue to open the economy to the world.
In late May, several hundred German executives and their families who had been forced to leave China due to the pandemic were granted special permission to return to their workplaces there. But it was anything but a sign of getting back to normal. Many European companies in China are still waiting for their employees to return. But Chinese authorities are refusing to let them in again. In a survey by the European Chamber of Commerce in China at the end of July, 1/3 of the companies said that none of their foreign employees had been allowed to return. Around 1 in 5 companies stated that only some of their expats had been able to come back, and only 17% said all employees had been permitted to return to China. The European Chamber sees this as a further sign of tightening restrictions against European companies. Almost half of those questioned said the pressure came mainly from the Chinese government. 44% said the tone of Chinese media had become more strident. And more than a quarter also had had negative experiences with the Communist Party. While Europe's borders are largely open to Chinese investors, the hurdles for entering the Chinese market are getting higher and higher. Those who manage to do so are often hindered by unfair business conditions in the country. One big exception is the auto industry. This is where cooperation has been improving for the benefit of both sides. The European Chamber says this should serve as a model for other sectors.
Head of the European Chamber of Commerce in China is Jörg Wuttke. He was involved in putting together that position paper. Aren't the Chinese just worried about the coronavirus being re-imported, and rightly so?
Well, I mean, they have been beating the coronavirus. We have no single case since a couple of weeks. It's only so-called imported. And they are very strict about quarantine. So in a way, I mean, they're in this dilemma. Are they going to keep the country shut, or are they going to open it up? So is coronavirus that important, or is the economy more important?
Well, it was only a few days ago that the President Xi, again promised a more open market in general. You paint a very different picture in your paper. What are we meant to believe?
Well, I mean, we had many promises and we had baby steps in opening up. What we really need is a deal, something that science here delivered, something that is committing China. I mean, I'm talking about the investment agreement, which will be discussed on Monday between Angela Merkel and Xi Jinping in this EU-China summit. So in a way, yes, we heard many words of opening up. We call it sometimes promise fatigue because they didn't really translate into actions.
What about President Trump's approach? He's taken a hard line on China. Is that what Ms. Merkel and others should be doing in Europe?
I mean, he's the bull in the China shop. I mean, that's impossible. He's putting up tariffs. He's dismantling the relationship to a point where actually he doesn't really ask for things. He just destroys the technology transfer. It destroys the financial system in many ways. What he does is basically really decoupling. And the chamber will look into this in order what that means for European business. No, it's very destructive.
So you'd say his approach is failing, is backfiring?
I guess it is. I mean, we are all losers in this point. Definitely, he had a good point in saying, China, you really have to stop talking and you have to start walking. But I mean, in this manner, it's impossible to negotiate. The Chinese are in the corner. It's not easy for them to compromise. We want, as Europeans, China to compromise, to make a step forward, to open up in real terms. And the last thing we want is China in the corner.
What more can von der Leyen and Merkel do? I mean, pleas and appeals haven't got Europe far. Surely both Europe and Germany have more in their toolkits than that.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, we have to talk with the Chinese where we want them to open and how fast and so forth. At the same time, we have to work on our own toolbox. The investment screening is the first step. Then we look into subsidies of companies, so we have a level playing field in our backyard against Chinese state enterprises. And maybe we have to look into procurement matters in third countries, the so-called IPI, where sometimes European companies are disadvantaged in comparison to Chinese SOEs bidding for projects such as, for example, in North Africa.
You live in China. How do the Chinese view Europe?
Well, for them, it's a historic site. It's frankly, in many ways, it's a boutique. They love to go there, visit Trier to see Marx and go shopping. At the same time, they have a high regard for quality coming out of Europe. They know that luxury items are European of nature in most cases. After all, 50% of all luxury items globally are bought by Chinese, though they have a normally very good attitude and perception of Europe. But of course, Europe is a democratic system and has different ideas about human rights, and that's normally where you get into disagreements.
Gerd Wuttke, the European Chamber of Commerce in China, thank you very much for being on the show.